I signed a prenup with Jessica when we were both just average earners with modest savings. Neither of us expected it would matter much back then. 5 years later, my software company exploded in value, turning our comfortable life into one of unexpected luxury. That is when the whispers started. Her family, who had nodded approvingly at our financial caution before the wedding, suddenly had opinions. Strong ones. About how a loving husband would tear up that old prenup now that there was serious money involved. I had no idea how ugly things would get. Tell me where you are watching from today, and hit that subscribe button if you have ever had to stand your ground against family pressure. Trust me, you will want to hear how I handled this situation. Meeting Jessica felt like winning the lottery without even buying a ticket. We connected instantly at a tech conference in Austin where we were both attending a panel on startup culture. I was presenting a small project I had been working on, and she was there representing her marketing firm. When our eyes met across that crowded conference hall, something just clicked. We were both 28 at the time, both from middle-class families in the Midwest, both raised with similar values about money. Save first, spend later. Work hard for what you have. Never take financial stability for granted. On our third date, we ended up talking about our parents and discovered we had both watched them struggle through tough economic times. Jessica grew up in Indianapolis, with her parents Frank and Marion, plus her older sister Amanda, and younger brother Alan. They lived comfortably but not extravagantly on her father's income as a regional sales manager and her mother's part-time work as a dental hygienist. Like my family, they valued education and financial security above luxury. After dating for 18 months, I proposed. When we started discussing wedding plans, I brought up the idea of a prenuptial agreement. My best friend had recently gone through an absolutely nightmarish divorce that left him financially devastated. He had built a small but successful construction company, and his ex-wife got half of it even though she had never contributed to the business. He had to lay off employees he considered family because he could not make payroll after the settlement. I explained this to Jessica, emphasizing that it was not about trust, but about protection. I had a small software development business that was barely breaking even, but I had poured my heart and soul into it. She understood completely. In fact, she appreciated my practical approach to our future together. We drafted a simple prenup that protected our premarital assets and kept our business interests separate. When we showed it to her family, they were supportive. Frank even patted me on the shoulder and said, "Smart man. Planning for every contingency shows good judgment." Our wedding was modest but meaningful. We honeymooned in Puerto Rico for a week, then returned to our small 2-bedroom apartment and our regular lives. For the next 2 years, we lived like most young married couples. We worked hard, saved what we could, and dreamed about the future. Jessica continued at her marketing firm, and I kept grinding away at my software company, working on client projects during the day and developing my own app idea at night. The app was a specialized tool for small businesses to streamline their inventory management and connect with local suppliers. I had noticed this pain point while building websites for local businesses and thought I could create something better than what was on the market. It was a passion project more than anything else. Jessica would often bring me coffee during late-night coding sessions and listen patiently as I rambled about API integrations and user experience flows. Then came the breakthrough. A major regional business association featured my app in their newsletter. Suddenly, I was getting hundreds of downloads a day instead of dozens. Small business owners were actually paying for the premium features. Within 3 months, I had to hire 2 additional developers to keep up with demand and feature requests. 6 months after that initial exposure, I received an email that changed everything. A venture capital firm wanted to meet. They saw the growth potential and offered a substantial investment that would allow us to scale nationally. The day I signed that deal, I came home with a bottle of champagne and 2 plane tickets to Hawaii. We did it. I told Jessica, watching her eyes widen as I explained the terms of the investment. The app is taking off. We are actually going to be wealthy. Our celebration was pure joy. We were on the same page about what this meant for us. A better house in a neighborhood with good schools for the children we planned to have. The ability to help both our families if needed. Freedom from financial stress. We had no idea that money could create entirely new kinds of stress. The first sign of trouble came at Thanksgiving dinner with her family about 4 months after the investment deal. We had just closed on a beautiful new home in a gated community, and everyone wanted to hear about it. As we described the property, I noticed Frank repeatedly mentioning family money and family success. "When one of us makes it, we all make it right," he said, raising his glass in a toast. At that same dinner, Jessica's brother Alan pulled me aside to discuss a business idea he wanted to start. He needed only $50,000 in startup capital. When I suggested he put together a proper business plan for me to review, his enthusiasm noticeably cooled. On our drive home, Jessica mentioned that her mother had asked some oddly specific questions about our finances while they were preparing dinner. "She wanted to know if we have joint accounts or separate ones," Jessica said, "and whether the house is in both our names." I shrugged it off as natural curiosity. Her family had always been closer and more involved with each other than mine. My parents respected boundaries to a fault, while hers had always been more enmeshed in their adult children's lives. That Christmas, her parents gave us an odd gift, a book about estate planning for wealthy couples. Inside, several pages about marital property laws were dog-eared. "Just some light reading," her mother said with a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. By the following spring, my company had grown to 28 employees. We had opened an actual office downtown instead of working from our home. Jessica had reduced her hours at the marketing firm to help with our company's branding and outreach. We were partners in every sense, building our future together, despite the technical separation of business assets in our prenup. That was when the coordinated campaign began in earnest. It started subtly. Jessica's mother, Marion, began making comments when Jessica and I visited for Sunday dinners. "I just do not understand why married people keep money separate," she would say while passing the potatoes. "In my day, marriage meant sharing everything." Her father, Frank, would counter with stories about couples who had torn up their prenups once they achieved success. The Richardsons next door, they had some legal agreement when they got married. Tore it up on their 10th anniversary. Said it was the most romantic thing they ever did. I later discovered there were no Richardsons next door and never had been. The comments came more frequently. At a family birthday celebration for Amanda's son, Jessica's sister cornered me by the cake table. "You know, Dennis, now that you are doing so well, have you thought about amending that prenup? It seems so unnecessary now. Jessica is your partner in everything else." Her tone was casual, but her eyes were calculating. The most bizarre incident came at a family barbecue when Frank introduced me to his old friend, who just happened to be a divorce attorney. This attorney spent 20 minutes telling me horror stories about how prenups had ruined families and relationships. "The smart men know when to let go of these things," he said, handing me his card. "They just create distrust, where there should be love." I began to notice Jessica becoming increasingly uncomfortable after family visits. She would be quiet on the drive home, lost in thought. When I asked what was wrong, she would say nothing in that tone that clearly meant something. After a particularly tense family dinner where her brother Alan announced he was in temporary financial trouble, Jessica finally opened up to me. "My family thinks the prenup means you do not fully trust me," she said. "They keep telling me that now that we have money, the prenup is just a way of controlling me." I was stunned. The prenup protects both of us. It is not about trust. It is about having clear expectations and boundaries. "I know that," she said, "but they keep saying that if you really loved me, you would tear it up now." Her family's campaign escalated rapidly after that conversation. Her parents began refusing to visit our new home, insisting we always come to them instead. Jessica's sister, Amanda, stopped inviting us to events with her children, saying it was too awkward with the current situation. Then came the Thanksgiving ambush. We arrived at her parents' house to find not just the immediate family, but several aunts, uncles, and cousins as well. After dinner, Frank clinked his glass and asked for everyone's attention. "We need to discuss something important as a family," he announced. Jessica looked as confused as I felt. For the next hour, I sat through what could only be described as an intervention. Each family member took turns explaining why our prenup was causing a rift in the family, and how I was demonstrating my lack of commitment to being part of their family by maintaining it. "Family means sharing everything," Frank said. "There is no mine and yours in a real family. How can Jessica fully be part of your life if you keep your success separate from her?" Amanda asked. A real man provides for his wife without conditions, Alan added, which I found particularly rich, coming from someone who had recently asked me for a loan to cover gambling debts he had hidden from the family. Through this entire ordeal, Jessica sat silent, tears streaming down her face. When I tried to explain that the prenup did not prevent me from sharing my life and success with Jessica, they talked over me. When I pointed out that Jessica had full access to our joint accounts and lived the same lifestyle I did, they dismissed it as missing the point. We left early, the Thanksgiving dinner ruined. In the car, Jessica was distraught. They had a private family meeting last week that you were not invited to, she admitted. They told me I needed to take a stand for my own financial security. But you are secure, I said. Everything we have built since getting married, we have built together. She nodded but seemed unconvinced. Over the next few weeks, she became increasingly distant. She took more phone calls in private and seemed to be having secret lunch meetings with her family members. I tried to give her space while making it clear I was there to talk whenever she was ready. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening. I came home from work to find Jessica sitting at our kitchen table, a folder of papers in front of her. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. "What is going on?" I asked, my heart pounding. "My family's lawyer prepared these," she said, pushing the folder toward me. Inside were divorce papers. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. "You want a divorce?" "No," she cried. "I do not want this at all. But my family says I should at least have them ready as leverage to get you to cancel the prenup." We talked for hours that night. Gradually, the whole truth came out. Her family had been working systematically to convince her that our prenup was a ticking time bomb in our marriage. They had convinced her that without equal legal access to my company assets, she was in a vulnerable position. But there was more, much more. Jessica finally admitted what was really driving her family's sudden concern. Her brother Alan had over $300,000 in gambling debts that he had hidden from everyone. Loan sharks were involved. Her father Frank had tried to start several businesses over the years, all of which had failed. He saw my success as a way to finally fund his latest venture. Her sister Amanda and her husband were underwater on their mortgage after a series of poor financial decisions. In short, her family saw my newfound wealth as the solution to all their problems. The prenup stood in their way because Jessica could not simply access large sums from my business without my agreement. They wanted unfettered access to what they were already calling family money. I held Jessica as she sobbed, finally understanding the immense pressure her family had placed on her. They had used her love for them as a weapon, manipulating her with guilt and emotional blackmail. "I love you," I told her, "and I will help your family within reason. But I will not let them destroy what we have built together." That night, I knew I needed to take action before this situation tore apart our marriage. The next morning, I called my lawyer to discuss the situation. She was rightly concerned about what had transpired. "They gave your wife divorce papers to use as leverage. That is manipulation, plain and simple," she said, "and possibly coercion depending on what exactly was said." She advised me to document everything that had been happening and to be very careful about my communications with Jessica's family going forward. I took her advice seriously, starting a detailed log of all the incidents that had occurred and saving text messages where family members had made concerning statements about our finances. I was particularly disturbed by messages from Frank to Jessica, saying things like, "Remember, financial control is a form of abuse," and "You deserve half of everything he has, not just what he decides to give you." These messages completely mischaracterized our financial arrangement. Jessica had access to all our joint accounts, which contained significant funds. The only assets protected by the prenup were my premarital savings and my ownership stake in my company. Over the next week, I gathered evidence of the family's true intentions. I recovered emails Jessica had received from her father with articles about hidden marital assets and how to claim business interests in divorce. I found text messages from her brother Alan discussing how Jessica could help the family once she had proper access to the money. Most disturbing was an email chain between all the family members planning the Thanksgiving intervention, where they explicitly discussed how to pressure me into removing the prenup so they could solve Alan's problem and get Dad's business funded. Armed with this evidence, I asked Jessica if she would support me in calling a family meeting. At first, she was terrified of confronting her family, but after seeing the collected evidence of their manipulation, she agreed it was necessary. "I love my family," she said, "but what they are doing is wrong. It is hurting us." I sent a formal email to all the key family members requesting their presence at our home the following Saturday. I explained that we needed to discuss some important matters regarding family finances and our future relationships. To my surprise, they all agreed to attend. I suspect they thought Jessica had convinced me to tear up the prenup. When Saturday arrived, I had prepared our dining room with documents at each place setting. As her family members arrived, their expressions shifted from smug satisfaction to confusion when they saw the formal setup. "Thank you all for coming." I began once everyone was seated. "I have asked you here today because we need to clear the air about several issues that have been affecting my marriage to Jessica." I established ground rules for the discussion. Each person would have a chance to speak without interruption. No shouting or personal attacks would be tolerated. This was about finding a solution that would work for everyone while maintaining appropriate boundaries. "First, I want to address the prenuptial agreement that Jessica and I signed before our marriage," I said. "This document was created when we both had modest means as a way to protect our individual interests should our marriage not work out. It was never intended as a statement about trust or love. I explained what the prenup actually covered, correcting the misconceptions they had been spreading. It protected my premarital assets and my business interests that existed before marriage. It did not prevent Jessica from benefiting from our joint success or from having security in our shared assets. Since our marriage, I continued Jessica, and I have built a life together. We have joint accounts. We make financial decisions together. The success of my company has benefited both of us equally in our daily lives." Then I moved to the more difficult part of the conversation. I placed copies of the emails and text messages I had discovered in front of each family member. "What I cannot understand is why you felt it necessary to manipulate Jessica and pressure her regarding our financial arrangements. These messages suggest your concern was not for Jessica's well-being, but for how her access to my assets could benefit you." The room fell silent as they looked at the evidence in front of them. Frank's face turned red. Amanda looked away. Alan stared at the table. "Let me be very clear," I said. "I know about Alan's gambling debts. I know about Frank's desire for business funding. I know about the financial difficulties several of you are facing." At this, Alan burst into tears. "I did not mean for it to go this far," he said, "but I am in serious trouble. These guys are not the kind you can just avoid paying." Frank finally spoke up. "We are family. Families help each other. All we wanted was for Jessica to have what is rightfully hers, so she could help her brother out of a bad situation." "No," I replied firmly. "What you wanted was access to money you had no right to. Instead of being honest and asking for help directly, you tried to manipulate your daughter into threatening our marriage. I turned to address all of them. Let me lay down some clear boundaries. First, the prenup stays in place. It is a legal document we both agreed to, and it will continue to protect both our interests." I paused to let that sink in before continuing. "Second, I am willing to help family within reason. Alan, I will loan you money to cover your gambling debts, but only if you agree to enter a treatment program and work out a payment plan with me. This is not a gift. It is a loan with specific conditions." Alan looked up shocked. He clearly had not expected any help at all after what had been revealed. "Frank," I continued, "if you have a business idea, I am happy to review a proper business plan. If it is viable, I might consider investing, but as a silent partner with proper legal protections in place, not as a handout." I looked around the table, but let me be absolutely clear. Any future attempts to manipulate Jessica or to drive a wedge in our marriage will result in the immediate end of any financial support and potentially limited contact with both of us. The room remained silent. Then Jessica, who had been quiet throughout my presentation, finally spoke. "I love all of you," she said, her voice trembling. "But what you did was wrong. You used my love for you to try to pressure me into threatening my marriage. You made me feel terrible for honoring an agreement I willingly signed." She stood up and walked to stand beside me. "Dennis and I are partners. We make decisions together, including financial ones. If you need help, you can ask us directly. We will consider any reasonable request, but we will not be manipulated or guilted." Then came the moment I will never forget. Jessica picked up the divorce papers her family had given her and tore them in half. "This is not who we are as a family," she said. "We can be better than this." The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Marion's quiet sobs. One by one, the family members nodded in reluctant acceptance. It was not a perfect resolution, but it was a beginning. As they left our house that day, I knew we had changed the dynamic forever. Whether that change would heal or further damage Jessica's family relationships remained to be seen. The months following our confrontation were difficult. Jessica's family maintained a chilly distance, responding to messages with one-word answers, and skipping several family gatherings. The first Christmas after our confrontation, we spent alone in our house, just the two of us exchanging gifts by our fireplace. Jessica tried to hide her sadness, but I knew she missed the chaos and warmth of her family's celebrations. I kept my word about helping Alan. I paid off his gambling debts after he agreed to enter a treatment program and signed a formal loan agreement with a reasonable repayment schedule. Frank was slower to come around. He never did present me with a business plan which told me everything I needed to know about how serious his venture had really been. The most important work happened between Jessica and me. We started seeing a marriage counselor to process what had happened and rebuild the trust that had been shaken. Those sessions were sometimes painful, but always productive. I felt torn between the two groups of people I love most, Jessica admitted during one session. My family raised me to believe that loyalty to family comes first always. When they started demanding I choose between their wishes and yours, I felt physically ill. The counselor helped us establish better communication patterns and strategies for dealing with her family going forward. She also encouraged us to create more financial transparency between ourselves to address any lingering insecurities. Together we set up a family foundation, funded with a percentage of my company's profits each year. We would jointly control this foundation, using it to help worthy causes, including family members if appropriate. This gave Jessica equal say in significant financial decisions while maintaining the legal protections the prenup provided. As the months passed, Jessica discovered her own entrepreneurial interests. With my encouragement, she launched a marketing consultancy, specializing in tech startups, leveraging the experience she had gained helping with my company. Watching her business grow became one of my greatest joys. Gradually, her family began to thaw. It started with Amanda reaching out to Jessica for advice on a career change. Then Marion called to share a recipe and ended up talking for 2 hours. The relationships were different now, more cautious, but also more honest. 6 months after our confrontation, we ran into Frank at a local restaurant. The meeting was awkward at first, but by the time we finished our meals, we had managed some genuine conversation. As we were leaving, Frank pulled me aside. "I was wrong," he said simply. "I got caught up in seeing dollar signs instead of seeing what was best for my daughter. I am sorry. It was not a perfect apology, but it was a start." From there, we began rebuilding. Some family members accepted our boundaries more readily than others. Alan, to my surprise, became one of our strongest advocates after completing his treatment program. His experience had humbled him, and he often spoke up when other family members started heading into inappropriate territory regarding our finances. Jessica and I continued to strengthen our partnership. We learned that protecting our relationship sometimes meant making difficult choices about family involvement. We also learned that boundaries were not walls, but necessary structures that actually enabled healthy relationships. A year after our confrontation, Jessica came to me with tears in her eyes, but these were tears of joy. She was pregnant. As we prepared to welcome our child, we had serious discussions about the values we wanted to instill, particularly around money and family relationships. "I want our child to understand that family is precious," Jessica said. "But that does not mean allowing yourself to be manipulated or controlled." I agreed. "And I want them to understand that money is a tool, not a measurement of love or worth." Looking back on everything that happened, I realized how differently things might have turned out if I had given in to the pressure or if Jessica had followed her family's manipulation. We might have lost the trust that forms the foundation of our relationship. Instead, we emerged stronger, with clearer boundaries and deeper understanding. The prenup that caused so much conflict remains in place, but it has faded into the background of our lives. It is simply a document in a drawer, while our partnership and the family we are building take center stage. I have learned that protecting what matters sometimes requires difficult conversations and firm boundaries. I have also learned that genuine generosity comes from choice, not obligation or manipulation. By standing my ground, I did not just protect my assets, I protected the integrity of my marriage. What about you? Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and standing your ground with family? How did you handle the situation? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more real-life experiences about navigating complicated family dynamics and financial boundaries. Sometimes the hardest battles are with the people we love most, but standing firm can lead to healthier relationships in the long run. Thank you for listening, and remember that boundaries are not selfish. They are an essential part of any healthy relationship.